curve appears to be flattening in New York. Tuesday was unfortunately the deadliest day yet in multiple states, including Florida. And some projections suggest that the peak in that state will be in early May. Joining me now is Katie Calloway, a certified physician assistant in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us today. And we're seeing these numbers and projections in Florida, some suggesting that it won't peak at least until early May. That's a very troubling sign. What are you seeing on the ground there?
Certainly. So to give a little bit of a background, I'm a nationally certified and state licensed PA that has been working in Florida for the past 10 years on the front lines in the emergency room. And I'm currently working in the Tampa Bay area. So I work at multiple hospitals in the Tampa Bay area. And we're actually seeing a fewer number of patients that are coming in through the emergency room. And I think that's because people here in the state are practicing some good social distancing, staying 6 feet away, wearing masks in Publix when necessary, and following some of the home precautions. So we are certainly ready for the surge of cases. We know that they're coming. That deadline keeps getting pushed back in terms of when patients are, when the surge is supposed to happen. And I think that's because we are seeing a flattening of the curve here in Florida.
So tell us a little bit, it's obviously good news that we're seeing that flattening happen in Florida. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and what your role has been in treating COVID-19 patients in the ER. What are some of the challenges that you're facing on a regular basis?
So some of the initial challenges are to make sure that you're really isolating the patients when they come in and making sure that you're screening them appropriately. So we have tents set up outside the hospital in order to make sure that patients are screened appropriately, and then we evaluate them and make sure that the staff is protected and use personal protective equipment with patients, that it is a necessity. And we are seeing some very sick patients that are coming in with COVID that may require oxygen or continue to stay in the hospital. And we actually just had some pretty good cases that patients that have been suffering from COVID at Advent are on their path to recovery. So those are really kind of heartwarming stories that you can see that people are doing well with the virus. And other times when people come into the emergency room, they're stable. So people that don't have very significant respiratory complaints or that have good oxygen saturations, these people that are typically able to manage the virus at home. So it's really trying to determine, whether that patient is going to need continued care or can they manage this on their own.
I'm curious to get your thoughts because so many of the physician assistants, the nurses, the doctors we've been speaking to say they've had to, play multiple roles inside a room with COVID patients, family members not allowed into the hospital right now. Tell us about the emotional and psychological toll of treating patients with COVID-19 who are sometimes facing this all alone.
It's a tough question when patients come in and they can't bring their family members in with them, and it's really for the protection of the staff and the family members themselves. And it's hard because I've even had cases where usually you would sit down with the patient and maybe even hold their hand if it was a difficult diagnosis to give, and it's almost like you have a little bit of animosity in towards of doing that because you want to make sure that you're also protecting the patient in the time of a pandemic. So it is quite different when we're talking about treating patients in the emergency room these days, but it is all for the protection of the patient to make sure that everyone stays as healthy as possible.
All right, Katie Calloway live for us in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you for what you're doing. Coming up, President Obama's former press secretary on the